Hello there and welcome to the value of everything. So as this year comes to a close, it's time to make a few predictions as to what lies ahead for 2017. In keeping with trend setting, I imagine we're going to be on the same trajectory as we are right now. However, things are going to start to amplify and potentially you will get a few spillouts. So the first thing that comes to mind is the end of the bond bull market. That is a reverse trend which has been going on for a tremendously long cycle, and now we're having it reverse and go into a bear market. So the cost of funding in pretty much every respect will be more difficult for people as well as for corporations. This will mean that any investment vehicle that will be over leveraged is going to find themselves in a spot of bother. Now, I would say that this is potentially the reverse signal for the housing market. The major corporations, say for example the ones that are doing the buybacks, and even potentially it puts in jeopardy nation states in a lot of trouble, as they have been issuing a significant amount of bonds running deficits, and if the cost of their funding is increased, then that puts them in a lot of trouble, and potentially it signals to more tax raises, more efficient ways of accumulating tax, and maybe stealth taxes as well. So the next would be the rise in populism, as we've seen in 2016, Donald Trump and even UKIP has won the right for the UK to leave the EU. So there is this rise of nationalism, and it's against the political elitists. So this may mean that a lot of political parties from the extreme right or the extreme left will come in to power. This in turn will start a triggering of more tariffs, less trade, less of a free market, but also it will highlight a lot of the injustices which have been happening in the globalist term of the free market, whereby, for example, China would artificially keep its currency low to have a trading advantage. Also, this means that the worker, I would say, if we're going down the route of the people are not happy with the wealth disparity between the mega wealthy and the very poor. So therefore, there is more of this incentive to realign the economy. Now, another interesting thing that is coming into the mix here is the flourishments of artificial intelligence. Now, if you could say artificial intelligence is any kind of tool, it's a tool for the elitists. However, it is also a tool for customer service. And this is going to be an interesting, I would say, time for AI technology. This potentially is going to signal some kind of throwback to AI, and this is where I'm going to stand on a limb here. And potentially we're going to see that as people recognize that AI technology is against the people, potentially they're going to revolt against AI technology and maybe even lobby against it to, say, pass laws so that people are not made unemployed against this new technology. So one of the obvious ones would be that, say, truck drivers or taxi cab drivers may try to lobby against losing work against the AI technology. Now, this is just one area that probably might not happen, but it may approach different areas. So, for example, call centers may be fully AI'd as well. Now, as we've seen with this anti-globalist view of the people do not like their jobs outsourced. People like speaking to local people who are of the same cultural heritage. So anti-globalization vibe is going to spread into technology. The interesting thing with technology is its adaptability. Maybe even AI technology will adapt to push forward the agenda of the populist, the nationalist, the person who wants more cultural unity in his country. So another one which is going to be fairly interesting, which really is the indicator of where people want to be or where to aspire to, or to give people a significant view of the future, which is the arts, and one of the biggest cultural influences of our time, which has been the cinema, I would predict is going to go into its very darkest phase this year. If you can see what are the biggest trailers that are going to be released, each one of them is a guaranteed bums on seats film. So, for example, they know that there's a guaranteed amount of people which are going to see a Marvel comic book hero fight some evil villains. There's a guaranteed bums on seats to reboot a very successful 80s movie. If you look at all the top trailers, each one of those trailers has the same type of theme, or at least a connection. Now, generally in storytelling, there is a repetitive pattern which continues. However, this has really gone to the wayside, and I guess all of these major film corporations are really too scared to go out on a limb and try something new. Even though culturally, we are right on the precipice of the biggest amounts of changes that we've ever seen. So there could be so many different visionary films that could be sent out now to show different paths, alternate futures, what the different technologies could mean to humanity. None of that's shown, and it's just playing it ultra safe. So as the arts are not going to be doing what it should be doing, and instead rebooting, say, for example, Star Wars, then I would imagine that there is going to be some, let's say, cultural throwbacks to certain movies. There's going to be some significant flops, and it will spell the end of cinema as a medium. Now, obviously, nothing completely ends, but it will definitely go into the category of being something like reading a newspaper. Now, with all these predictions of bad news, it's not necessarily all one way. There will be a massive surge in heroes. However, I would put with a little caveat beneath them, there will be manufactured heroes as well as real heroes, which will be a voice of the people as well as being a voice for the elite. Now, I would say that probably the most eloquent, the most gifted speakers be more wary of, and the ones that seem to be speaking from the heart, if you could say that, then they would be the ones to lean towards. However, everything can be manipulated one way or the other. But obviously, when we come down to the crux of all the issues, if we could say that these great people, these heroes that spring up, these ones who can connect, are also the most dangerous at the same time. So this prediction of heroes, there'll definitely be more heroes springing up in bad times. However, these heroes also turn into dictators, give it another 5 years down the road. So as you'll see more so and more so, and obviously as you can see that there is more of a medium for anyone really to pick up a microphone and speak out their mind to a humongous world audience, then this does create a lot more instability for governments in general, who usually would orchestrate the medium. Obviously, in the past, they would have only like messengers or newspapers or even cinemas where they could use propaganda to persuade the audience, but now it is the time for these individuals who can connect with the masses. And I would say that even bigger dangers lie with this a big established government who has to pander to its lobbyists, its people, is a real slow moving machine. Obviously, it does go in a very ghastly direction, but it is nowhere near as fast and as dangerous as a perceived hero is who can dictate orders to the masses. Okay, and then we have the potential outbreak of a war. Now, as I imagine you would know that there is a military-industrial complex, and it does survive on the fact that there is wars which are continuing around the world all the time. So any kind of outbreak of war is going to be quite predictable. And if anything, you could potentially see this new Cold War, which is going to materialize between China and America. There will be a build-up in the nuclear arsenals. There'll be more fighter planes being bought. There'll be Japan asking for more orders for weaponry. So this is a good time for being a arms dealer. But I can't necessarily predict that there will be an actual full outbreak of war. There will be proxy wars, as there always is, because the threat of a major war will destroy the person who is profiting from it. So really, you have to look at the model of money itself, and the model of money would suggest that you really don't want to get yourself into a state where you're destroying all the things that you enjoy from the wealth. So you're not going to destroy all the workers that are supplying you with all these great goods. You're not going to destroy your home, but you will want some kind of business cycle working in the background to ensure that you are putting bread on the table. So a continuation of these types of wars and a continuation of this new Cold War. And now we're going into terrorism. So terrorism has been on the increase in a significant way throughout 2016, and it hasn't necessarily just been pictures of people dressed in orange being beheaded and that being spread on the newspapers. It has actually hit home in a real grotesque way, whereby we're seeing these disturbing Grand Theft Auto destructions where people jump onto trucks and drive through open air shopping centres. So this does tie into two major points, which is immigration and national security. Now, the problem with national security, obviously, is that, say, for example, the Patriot Act can be used on the people itself. So people surveillance can happen as a consequence of a terrorism act. So never discount these laws to be passed on the people, and be very careful of the fact that if, say, for example, terrorists are manufactured, then be very careful of what law is being passed as a consequence of the terrorism itself. Now, obviously, mass killings is not a very good thing. However, for a person to defend oneself, if, say, for example, their right to bear arms is being taken from them, then that's a completely different story in itself. But it's interesting how trucks are being used right now, because trucks aren't necessarily a mass killing weapon. However, what you could potentially see is that trucks could be, with the route of driverless cars, you could see that there's going to be an actual ban of anybody using trucks, and with the new technology of driverless vehicles coming in, there could be an outright ban of these massive good vehicles of people driving, and instead you're going to have driverless systems in these trucks instead. that could be a potential development which could occur. The other overflow of terrorism is immigration itself. So people are not generally happy with the quotas of refugees by the EU. They're not happy about the free flowing of students coming over to countries. People really want to keep and hold their cultural identity, and having their country being overpopulated, having their cities overpopulated, has never really been anything that they voted for. However, it's been a great GDP spinner, and it has enabled many countries to amass greater wealth or greater productivity in a sense because of the increase of populations at a significant cost. So, as I've mentioned before, the rise of populism is going to spread into this closing off from outsourcing jobs, importing new workers or refugees. And the significant flag of what is happening here is coming from the breakdown in culture or the assimilation of its culture because of different sects and different communities coming in and not assimilating to the national identity. So, this is obviously a very touchy subject, but I would imagine that if problems or terrorist attacks increase by any way, this is going to really push out a lot of the mainstream politicians and is going to really put forward an agenda for political parties with a lot more of a hard stance against immigration itself. And obviously, Donald Trump is the prime example of that, but that is going to also happen throughout the EU, for example, which you can definitely predict that there will be some kind of disintegration in terms of the economy as well as its cultural cohesion. So, just to keep yourself in this frame of mind, it really is going to be 2007, 2008 all over again. We're going to have massive volatility in the stock markets. They're probably going to survive a few days, and then there will be a few months to pass, and then there'll be massive volatility again. But then at some point, it's going to turn into a true run on the stock market. And as we've got algorithmic trading, which can perpetuate the direction of a downturn, this is going to happen in a very shocking way. Now, also because all governments are indebted and trying to get themselves out of this mess, there really is going to be a major insolvency issue just from the amount of forced selling which is going to occur. So really, if you could look at all these predictions and see what is coming around the corner, it's really best to get yourself into the best shape possible to expect more of the 2007-2008 situation. Now, if you can recall what happened then, all of the biggest asset owners around that time lost the most because they were forced to sell. There was a massive devaluation of pretty much every asset which was coming onto the market. However, there was a few things which were showing some promise. So these months, maybe it's a little less under a year, maybe it's a little bit more than a couple of years, is definitely a good time to get your financial house in order, making sure that you do have the best hedges for a downturn. You have got significant savings to keep yourself afloat for a good few months. You've got a good little bit of storage of food. It never does you any harm. So I would say that with all these predictions, make sure that you are prepared as much as you can. Also, there's a good point here is just to keep a few little jobs on the go. Don't have all your eggs in one basket when it comes to incomes. Make sure you've got a few things on the boil, as when people are liquidating and everyone's trying to make the dash for cash, it's very good for you to be on the other side of the compounding interest equation, rather than struggling and desperately trying to sell your over-leveraged assets at fire sale prices. And as I was outlining before, this is a time where heroes are created. So if you can get your financial house in order, a few financial plans, if you can lead to yourself to a simple life, be an upstanding person in your community, then it's your manufactured preparation which is the savior for others. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to be pumping out a few more podcasts to keep up with you in current events. So if you like this one, please subscribe or send me any comments below. Thank you very much.